Hey everybody, Tammy out in the back urban garden. I am your brown thumb rebel prepper. And you might recall, if you watched any of my other videos, if you watched any of my other videos, you saw that I had this tomato plant and it had a bad case of blossom end rot, rot. And it was very disappointing because the very first tomato, the very first fruit of my garden was on this little tomato plant, and it had an issue with the blossom end rot. Well, I went to Mark's, as you may remember, and I got some CalMag, calcium magnesium solution, and now we're going to see, is it working? So I'm plucking this little guy off, and look, no blossom end rot. It's a great little organic tomato. Yay! So that's the good news. The good news is the CalMag works. So if you have blossom end rot on some of your fruits or tomatoes or plants like that, well, you can use a CalMag solution and look at the other video and you'll see what that is. Also, there is a recipe online somewhere for making another calcium solution using garden lime and vinegar and water. And that not only is more economical, but it might be stuff that you already have laying around. So check that out. Look for blossom end rot solutions. Google it or whatever, and you should find that particular solution. Anyway, the bad news is really disappointing. For years and years and years, I have tried to grow berries here in the Inland Empire, and I have had no results, right? So I did get a few strawberries going already, and here's the disappointing part. These plants were nice and healthy, and now they seem to have some sort of powdery mildew type stuff on them. So that's one raspberry that's got it. This one, the middle one's starting to get it on the edges, as you can see. And this poor little guy down here is also getting it. So I have to go visit Mark later to figure out what I can do to hopefully rehab these plants, because they're beautiful plants and I really love raspberries, and I'm hoping that I can get this thing solved. And when I'm thinking about all this, I'm thinking, how did our ancestors ever survive? I mean, think about it. They didn't have any modern tools. They didn't have any modern techniques. They didn't know about DNA. They didn't know about cloning. They didn't know about any of that stuff. And they had tons of bugs. I mean, you can imagine going to the prairie or something where there's never been people and being the first settlers, and then the bugs are like, wow, these people have all kinds of good stuff to eat. So I can't imagine what it was like. It was interesting that when my parents passed away recently, and I got a hold of a bunch of stuff from my grandparents and my great-grandparents who were farmers, just generations of farmers. You'd think I'd have a green thumb with all that good genetic material, but no, I have a brown thumb. So anyway, it was interesting because there were some of their farm business documents, like loans and stuff, and they would have to borrow money every year against the crop just to be able to buy seeds and basic stuff like plows and blades for the plows and stuff like that. But even before them, those people had no access to any of that. They didn't have access to capital. They didn't have access to anything, and somehow they made it through. So the lesson in this, for all of you who are prepping, for all of you who are seeing what's going on around us, because a lot of people are just in total denial. They're like, oh, things will get better, things will get better, No. Read your history, do your math, okay? But for those of you who are getting a little discouraged with that, look, our ancestors and their ancestors survived. They just learned a few essential skills. They kept a good frame of mind, which is what a garden will do for you. It'll keep your spirits up. It'll give you something interesting to do. If, God forbid, there's a lockdown, and for, somehow in my soul of my souls, I think they're going to try that crap again, because it worked pretty well the first time. Not as well as they wanted, but they're going to try it again, because people that are drunk on power, well, they like it. So if you're going to have another lockdown, you're going to have a garden going, at least you'll have something to occupy your mind, your body, your spirit, and keep you engaged. And the purpose of an urban garden, by the way, because you'll read statistics online that's like, it takes an acre to grow enough food for one person for 1 year. So if you have 5 people in your family, you got to be sitting on 5 acres. And so it's discouraging for people in urban areas. But that's not true. There's all kinds of innovative techniques you can use now to make an urban garden. For example, I've seen some beautiful homemade stacked aquaponics systems. If you live in a place that has a lot of water, boy, that's great. There's also just ways to maximize your space. Like, you look at mine, and I have a tiny little space, but I haven't maximized it like I could. I mean, you can grow in containers. You can make shelving where you can put plants on top of one another. There's a lot of things you can do in a very small space. And again, the garden has such psychological value that I think you are going to get that benefit. It's going to keep your spirits up when things are looking bad. You're going to be able to look at this beautiful fruit and say, you know what, I helped Mother Nature grow this wonderful fruit that I have on my tree. I'm helping the environment. Whatever your thing is, you can find some release out here in the garden. So don't get discouraged if you're a brown thumb like me. And don't get discouraged when all these monsters destroy your garden, because they'll try. Instead, look for the remedy online, look for the remedy in books. And by the way, I do recommend you keep a few gardening books and maybe herbal medicine books and things like that on the side as a prep. Because when it goes down, people don't realize that the internet's going to go down too. If, for example, just think about hurricane season. Go look up what they're expecting this year from El Nino and from the hurricane season, and you'll see that alone is enough reason to really prep and to have some books on first aid. And if you have time, go get yourself certified in CPR and first aid. That's what I'm going to do in a couple of weeks, I think, is I'm going to go to a class and get a certification. Why? Because when times get tough, the more you can do for yourself and your neighbors, the better everyone is. So with that being said, this is Tammy, your brown thumb rebel prepper.